Neeli and Tammy, thanks again for joining us as we kick off this year's Mid-South Capital Connection. As you know, we've brought together a group from across the region of private equity ecosystem, really to learn more about each other, share with each other. And every year we host this with our friends in Tennessee. And this year we're hosting this virtually in Louisville, unfortunately. So to kick us off, what I'd like to do is give a little introduction to the city, a little flavor of the city, to everyone that's joining us on this virtual audience. So Neeli, as the newest member of our community, I'm going to come to you and maybe share some insights and general welcome about the city and your views of the city that you would like to share with our audience today.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for having both of us. This is one of my favorite people in the world, so I would never miss an opportunity to be together with Tammy on the stage. I have been here for 3 years now, so I like to joke that I'm a senior at UFL now, and I cannot say enough good things about this city. I really mean that, because like the Mid-South, it really has the Midwestern work ethic, the Southern hospitality. Louisville is a city that really has everything, because whether it's the arts that you're into, whether it's athletics, whether you are a foodie, or maybe you want to try bourbon, it's a very livable, lovable city. That's how I put it. So I am so sorry that this is virtual, but I strongly encourage all of your attendees. I had a chance to look, very impressive roster, that if you haven't been here, you must come. And as a teacher, I'm giving that assignment. We want to make sure that people come and really experience this wonderful place that we call home.
Well, as you saw on our agenda, no event that happens in Louisville is complete without a bourbon event.
Of
so
course.
We are giving our attendees
The sampler,
even
I
virtual, a
saw.
sampler, exactly. So we want them to have at least that experience.
Indeed, indeed.
So Tammy, you've been here as long as I have, really. You know, from a native
Almost,
well,
yes.
almost. I'm older, I know. But anything else to share from your perspective about Louisville that you want people to know?
Well, you know, Louisville is such an amazing city. You know, it's one of the reasons I am sad that this is virtual, because we have so much to offer and experience here. Louisville native. I laughed and said I did a Midwest tour with cities I lived in Ohio and in Indiana and, you know, Chicago, you know, Illinois for half of my time. But it's such an amazing community, and Neeli and I kind of started our journeys, you know, in relation to this conversation at the same time. Even though I'm a Louisville native,
right.
You know, she's newer to our city. You know, she's been at U of L 3 years. I've been at the council 3.5, and I think that, you know, when we look at our community and where we are, we both share that admiration for it.
And you can tell from both of your standpoint the passion you show about the city, so it's exciting. So let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about, start with the university, and not to shortchange everything that's going on academically at the university, which are a lot of amazing things. I'd like to get your perspective on certain areas about the university, specifically around the work you're doing in innovation, creativity, partnerships, commercialization. So maybe share with us a little bit what's going on in that regard.
I'm glad to do that, and this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. As some of the members of your audience may or may not know, I've been on public and private boards for a couple decades now, and as someone who describes herself as a recovering banker, I can tell you that one of the things that I really care about is how is the university contributing to the economic, social well-being of the city and of the Commonwealth. So we take this very seriously at our university. I'm very fortunate to be at a place that has a long tradition of commitment to innovation. This may come as a surprise to people, but we actually have more translational research awards than any other university. So when you look at the Coulter, NSF, we have so many grants that are really geared towards taking what happens within the walls of the university and making sure it doesn't just stay there.
Right.
That really, we have an incredible town-gown partnership, but thanks to the ecosystem that is here in Louisville, LHCC is part, others are part, we really have double down on innovation. So last year, we had our highest amount of research grants in the history of the university. We're very proud of that. And when you talk about commercialization and taking it out there, maybe one example I could bring up, there's several, but let's stay within the biomedical. The claim I made earlier about having every possible translational commercialization innovation award that's in the biomedical field. So think about Teleris. Just had an IPO of $150 million, and that comes after Series A funding of, I want to say, $100 million in 2019, and another 120 Series B in 2020. So that's an example of something that comes out of the university and then is able to impact the world. Or Apellis, that we are so proud of right here. Once again, it's because of the creativity, the forward thinking that comes from having an R1 university here. And again, this is my professional jargon, but of the several thousands of universities that exist in this country, only about 130 are called R1. And it's fascinating if you look at where they're located. Really today, you cannot have a vibrant city without a vibrant R1 university there. That's the highest level of research capability. It acts as a talent magnet. It also provides an engine for the discoveries, interdisciplinary discoveries that are being made to go out into the world.
So who's some of the company you're keeping in R1 universities?
Oh goodness, if you look at the R1 universities, it's your Ivies, it's your Big Tens, it's your, it's a pretty elite group, and we're very proud of that. Also at the University of Louisville, the infrastructure that I'm talking about that we're now beginning to truly capitalize and tell the story is that we have one of only 12, I believe, biosafety level 3 labs in the country. So the infrastructure is there to do the cutting edge research. And R1 also means we're strong not just in one area, but a variety. So our engineering, hopefully we'll have a chance to talk more about that, but our engineering prowess, the fact that we have a dental school here, nursing school here, public health, and then let's not forget, we tend to go only to the hard sciences when we are discussing this, but I'm so proud of the spirit of innovation we are creating that from our College of Education and Human Development, we now have technology that's being used to measure employee engagement. So I could go on and on. I should probably stop. But
no, it's clear you
there's
can.
A lot
of exciting things going on.
A lot of great things happening.
Well, I'm going to come back to you one more question before we pivot here, and that is, let's talk about some of the partnerships. And one of the ones that's front and center that people see as they go through the Louisville is your partnership with GE in the First Build initiative. So maybe talk a little bit about that and how that came about, and what was the university's role in that?
This is something that is a gem on our campus. And again, when all of your attendees come back in person to tour, I hope they'll come and walk through, because this is a space that spurs creativity in you. It's also open to the community. It's not just between the university and GE. It's an opportunity for our students, for our faculty to work alongside. It's more than Skunk Works, because it really allows GE's employees to come up with new products, innovations. There's so many, but what I love about this is that one example I saw was someone who is blind that needs to do their laundry. Just think about that. It doesn't sound like a profound problem unless you're somebody living with that. And the fact that our students were able to work alongside, our faculty were able to work alongside and come up with a solution. These are the things that happen. GE and First Build also has done a lot alongside the university to just get more people interested in engineering. The partnership is strong because Kevin Nolan, the CEO, I've had come and speak to my senior leadership team. I've had the opportunity to speak to their senior leadership. So that's the beauty of a place like Louisville, where we're large enough to have all of these activities, but small enough that you build that personal connection, not just at the top, but throughout the organization.
Yeah, definitely. Which makes a difference, right? The more connectivity you have,
no question,
the more effective it's going to be.
And on this, especially at a time when people have options on where to live and work, remote work and so on, I just feel like at Louisville, we have a great opportunity. Austin or Chapel Hill, they all have their growth from strong research foundations. And why not us?
Exactly. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about healthcare, a space that both of you all are making big strides in, huge investments in, and making a difference not only in our community but across the world, really. And so, Tammy, I'll come to you. The audience might not be as familiar with your organization, the Louisville Healthcare CEO Council. So maybe let's start there and share a little bit of information about the council and how it came to be 3.5 years ago and what the key objectives are about the council.
Absolutely. You know, the council was actually convened by David Jones Sr., who, you know, gosh, when we look at the foundation and his legacy that continues on, it's amazing. And the council is one of those. He convened a group to say, we're looking at an aging nation. 1 in 5 people are going to be over the age of 65 in 8 years. So 3.5 years ago, 4 actually now, he said, let's get together and get in the room as the CEOs of the largest healthcare companies that are really focused on healthcare aging innovation and talk about our collective viewpoints about how we solve for this, because healthcare has to change in our nation. And in Louisville, we're uniquely positioned just by density of cluster here.
Right.
So the council came together, the CEOs met, really looked at, should we be a formal organization? Should we just have conversation? Decided to formalize the organization. We're a 501c4. And then we started our work to launch our strategy, which now centers around innovation with supporting pillars of access to capital and then thought leadership on a global level. So the council is comprised of 12, soon to be 13 CEOs. Only the CEO of the organization can serve on our board of directors. We represent about 120 billion in revenue, touch 90 million lives annually, and represent about 450,000 employees on a national basis. So, as we set our roadmap, we knew that with innovation being at the core of what we wanted to focus on, the relationship with U of L and having the partnership with U of L was absolutely critical to the success of what we wanted as a tier 1 university. You really can't approach innovation in healthcare without it.
Right.
And so, when we launched our strategic plan, it really is a roadmap that the CEOs set by identifying where our biggest challenges are in healthcare. And then we built an innovation engine around it where we say, let's do a deep dive into the council companies. When you look at, you can journey map an entire patient experience from when they enter through an event through end of life with this council. So let's change things and look at a systems approach instead of individual and realign a system around how we solve for the challenges. Healthcare doesn't look like healthcare anymore.
Right.
When we talked about some of the initiatives with GE and the different partners, it's a whole different ballgame, and it's going to be unrecognizable from how it used to be in 10 years. So we've launched our first systems-wide pilots, engaged the university to do research around it, to measure not only the effectiveness when you do discover a need and take the mystery out of what innovations are needed to solve for healthcare, and then look at launching an innovation across a whole system. That's never been done. That's very unique. And it's one of the differentiators for us. So for us, we're measuring through the research not only the effectiveness of an intervention and an innovation, but the process and the effectiveness of a process by doing it with a centralized, organization like LHCC across all of the member organizations.
And when you say healthcare from the council's perspective, it's across the broad spectrum of healthcare.
It is.
Because everybody has people say that word, and everybody thinks maybe a hospital or facility, but you all look at it across the whole spectrum.
We do. We laughed and said, we need a lexicon for everything. Ecosystem means different things to different people.
No, it definitely does.
What a healthcare ecosystem is. So that's exactly right. We have the line of sight, that entire line of sight, when you look at the continuum of care. So, when we're talking about it from that perspective, that's exactly correct, as you just articulated. So we also, a couple of the key differentiators are things that never existed before, that it really takes an organization, like us, where we as a neutral organization with all of these council companies, because the uniqueness is we have competitors, we have disparate views, we have, through that whole continuum of care that's represented, with these organizations, they've all come together with the two goals of providing those national solutions that are needed in healthcare, and then economic vibrancy for Louisville through leveraging around this cluster. And it really takes an organization like ours, you know, a key piece of this is a data hub where we can get the data from all of the different council companies to really understand and analyze across that system. It's never been done in the US. So it's one of the things that we're very excited about when we launch a pilot, when we, you know, look at a use case. That data will be game changing and allow us to really have an understanding and improve better health outcomes. You know, that's the ultimate goal for patients.
Healthcare's always been big at the university, both from a research standpoint, but also from a provider standpoint. Over the last few years, you've made a big investment in healthcare on all those fronts. So maybe speak a little bit about your all's commitment to healthcare and how you fit to that space.
Glad to do that. In fact, it's a personal passion of mine. Some of the research I did was at the Mayo Clinic regarding the patient experience, Ohio State University Health Plan sitting there in terms of a payer perspective, working with Cerner in terms of trying to analyze this. So this is something that has been a passion for me for many, many years. And then coming to this university and having an opportunity to really preserve healthcare for this community, I am very grateful for that opportunity. Because year two, there was this big crisis of Jewish Hospital and Mary and Elizabeth and Fraser, all of these that were so important for the care of the community. So I'm glad we were able to step up. During pandemic, I don't know how the Commonwealth would have survived, not just Louisville, if these facilities were not open. But what we are able to do is double down and enhance what LHCC is doing by realizing that healthcare is such an important part of the economy of the city. So as an example, the bold goals we've set for the university are empowering our communities. If we have a moment, we can talk about that. Advancing health and engineering our future economy. So all these three, we were very mindful of the fact that we as a university need to contribute. So I'm so proud that the NSA picked us as one of the hubs for training people in cybersecurity, specifically around healthcare. So the fact that we have a $6 million grant last year that will hopefully continue to train people. We're starting with first responders and veterans, but it'll soon be open to everybody. So they have the security clearances and they have in-depth learning in this. So that's what I mean by supporting as a university the ecosystem in healthcare. And Tammy can go on and on about this, but our researchers stepping up to say, how do we address the social determinants of health? What can we do to empower our communities? Because University of Louisville also has one more distinction that makes us ripe for this study, is that we have almost 40% Pell eligible students. So Pell Grant eligible is, think of it as free and reduced lunch in schools. And so the fact, which is very unusual, it's about 4 times what it is for a typical R1 university, but it allows us a picture into a new vision of health and harmony, as we like to talk about it, because it's health is, do you have the economic support you need? Do you have the social support you need? The psychological, the spiritual, all of these that play a role. And that's where our research prowess comes into place. Kindred, I don't want us to forget another major partner at LHCC, like GE. We have the Hive on our campus that people need to know. So once again, same principle. Faculty, students working alongside Kindred employees to come up with those breakthrough ideas and innovation that makes a difference.
Yeah, and Ben Breyer, you know, CEO of Kindred, is our board chair. I mean, the intersection, there's so much of it. So when we look at those, you know, opportunities and initiatives, and exactly, you know, Neeli, as you said, during this pandemic, social determinants of health, it was a buzzword, you know, a few years ago. Now it's been very highlighted and spotlighted. You know, when we set our roadmap in 2018, you know, it was set as our 2020 focus. And really getting to the core of those health-related social needs through the pilots, through the identification, through taking the mystery out of what's needed in innovation by the corporate companies with us, and then engaging the research is at the core.
Well, a good example of your roles working together the reason we're virtual is still COVID, right? We had to make that decision a few months ago, and we didn't know where we would be in this landscape. So the council spun up in this community, the Co-Immunity Project. So maybe talk a little bit about that, Tammy, and then that leads to a project that U of L has taken the lead on the wastewater project. So maybe...
Yes, and this is a great example because U of L, Co-Immunity was born out of the work that was being done at U of L. When you look at the Environment Institute and, as Neeli, mentioned, U of L has one of only 12 BSL-3 labs in the nation. So, there's this amazing work that was being done around this and other efforts. When we looked at the crisis that this pandemic, brought on in the onset that we were not prepared as a nation to deal with, Co-Immunity came out initially from testing and the identification of convalescent plasma, because the real identification of the best convalescent plasma can only be done in a BSL-3 or BSL-4 lab. So I got the call at 8 p.m. I think from one of our board members, Dr. Cedric Francois. We mentioned Apellis earlier, and when Cedric says, "Hey Tammy, I have an idea," it's going to get interesting.
Right.
And that is where we started this journey because of the relationship there, his relationship with U of L. It was, how can we bring a whole ecosystem together? Could we convene the chief medical officers for all 3 hospitals? Look at leveraging, Dr. Palmer and the work that was going on around our opportunity around testing that ultimately then led to the wastewater testing project, which, U of L was ahead of the rest of the nation. I know, the calls from other universities going, wow, this sets an example. So Co-Immunity is a great example of taking an ecosystem that's developed, the convener, like LHCC, to leverage the amazing research and efforts that are going on with our university.
And in fact, I could not agree more. It's everybody coming together. We're large enough that we have impact, but we're small enough that we can work together.
Right.
So the Center for Preventive Medicine that with Dr. Palmer, Envirom with Dr. Aruni Bhatnagar, and then the fact that we had Pfizer's only North American Center for Excellence on Infectious Diseases right here. With Dr. Ramirez and others. So we have all of these pockets of excellence, and then layer on top of it the work that was being done in advanced manufacturing. The fact that when the rest of the country was struggling with testing kits, here were our engineering advanced manufacturing group that stepped up and said, we'll 3D print the swabs. Forget about getting these shipped from somewhere.
Right.
So these were the things that I think highlight what can happen when the research prowess of people can be enhanced and honed by interaction with people who are on the front line delivering these services day in and day out.
That's it. And, bringing together, I don't want to minimize being able to have all 3 hospital systems. It's sometimes
No
be
question.
fierce
No,
competitors,
definitely.
on the phone every other night to say, how can we best serve the patients, how can we deal with this and in our community and set that example, on a national level is really impactful.
I think that's a great point. I do want to say, because this could not have happened if it was just U of L Hospital.
Right.
So very, very grateful to Norton and Baptist by saying, all right, we're going to work together. And so we were able to provide testing for everybody.
Right.
And so, how do you do this in a cooperative fashion? And I want to tell people, yes, the pandemic showed that we could step up and do it, but I sense that in Louisville, that people do want to work together. And Humana, can't say enough about David Jones Sr. They were my first guests at home when I became president here. And so I think there's something in the fabric of this community that says, we are more than just for ourselves or our organization. We are here to serve a bigger purpose. And so let's roll up our sleeves and get it done.
Tammy, before we wrap up here, I want you to go back to a comment you made earlier when you were introducing the council and talking about capital access. And that's a nice connecting point to our audience.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about, just kind of briefly as we're kind of closing out, about what you are doing in the capital formation, capital access.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the absolute pillars for what we're doing. Because when you look at our whole innovation engine and when we want to and are taking these pilots and expanding and duplicating, we're identifying the innovators that have the solutions that are needed, by our corporates and in healthcare across the system. So a big part of that is the access to capital for them. When we say we have your access to customers, we have the thought leadership, the mentorship here. LHCC is convening, we announced, an investment fund, a strategic investment fund centered around healthcare. Ours is in that growth stage company. And so through our identification and our initiatives, that's going to be a critical piece. And then we're also facilitating that access through our relationships. And somebody told me don't use Rolodex anymore. Now it's follower-ship. I think it is. So I'm showing my age. But that connection to capital throughout the region, the nation, and globally is at the center and a real supporting pillar for all of our initiatives. And so we're very excited about that. We're going to be launching our fund this year. And are looking at what it means. It'll be the largest investment fund actually in Kentucky.
Incredible. So, ladies, again, on behalf of Mid-South, we appreciate the time. And for our audience, I know you were able to see a little bit of the passion that both of you have, not only for our city, your organizations, and the community that we're trying to all together move forward. So thanks for that. Thanks for everybody joining us this year at Mid-South. Hope you've learned a little bit about our city and a lot about these two organizations that are making a difference, not only for Louisville, Kentucky, but for the country. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you to MCM as well.
Thank you.